Alright guys and girls, we are on a little road trip across the state of Pennsylvania from Philadelphia up to the northwest corner of the state. We're going to talk a little bit about traveling distance on the Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob. Alright everybody, what is up? What is up as always? Thanks for stopping by to another video today. We are at a gas station in Clearfield, Pennsylvania. That's right, like I said, we are on a road trip across the state of PA. We're going from Philly to the northwest corner of the state up near Erie, PA. So that seemed like an obvious time to go ahead and talk about my experience so far with traveling, doing some road tripping and longer distance than normal on the Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob 114. So in just a minute, we're going to hop back on the bike, continue the road trip. We're about 250 miles in at this point. We'll talk a little bit about my experience with the bike so far on the road trip. Talk a little bit more about some of my tips and tricks on how to set yourself up for success while road tripping with the Softail Street Bob. So first off, one thing to consider when you're looking at long distance with the Softail Street Bob, obviously super minimal, super stripped down, no bags, anything like that. You might have to throw some saddlebags here on the side. My setup, super easy and simple. I just take this one big large bag, strap it up to the sissy bar here. We got it nice and locked down. We got about a week's worth of stuff in this bag here. So as far as my setup, that's all I really have. You know, some people might also have tank bags. You could get yourself some handlebar bags, mini saddle bags, stuff like that. But of course, that's one of the biggest things you're gonna have to take into consideration road tripping or long distance with this bike. Probably gonna need some type of storage if you don't want to wear a backpack. So again, you might add saddlebags, but my setup's super simple right here. This is the big one for long road trips. Again, I've got a couple smaller ones that I just throw in the back of the seat for like some day trips and stuff like that. But first off, just wanted to get that one out of the way. As far as like luggage and gear and everything, this is my setup, just one big bag strapped here to the sissy bar. Let's go ahead, hop on and tell you the rest of how it's been going so far. Alrighty, so we are on the bike now, taking in some lovely scenery on 322 West, headed out of Clearfield, PA, headed towards DuBois, PA. So just real quick on the trip so far, it's been pretty good. Started out of Philly, of course, hit the interstate I-76, that was all highway, over to the Harrisburg, Hershey area, then linked up with 322, took that up to the State College, PA area. Now still on 322, again, still heading west out of Clearfield, PA to DuBois, PA. So this is a good route through PA. It gives you a little bit of kind of everything. Highway, back roads, back onto some highway, back onto some back roads. So a little bit of everything, gets you a good mix, gives you a really good feel for what it's like to road trip and travel on this bike. So of course, if you guys have ever road tripped with your Street Bob or any Softail really, let me know what you think about it. Let me know how you outfit the bike. I'm going to talk a little bit about my setup and how I've kind of set this up to make it a little bit better, more convenient for traveling. And let me know what you think about traveling on this bike in comparison to any others. Drop it down there in the comments. So the first thing you think about, obviously, is kind of like the power. It's the Milwaukee 8 114, of course. So, I mean, not a whole lot to say there. It's just a good, big, beefy cruiser engine. It performs well on the highway, performs well on the back roads. On the highway, if you think about it, it's got plenty of torque to carry you in the passing situations, you know, past the truck, past the cars, anything like that. The one nice thing about this that I really like is obviously you've got the 6 gears, 6-speed transmission where you're out there flying around on the highway. You get up there around 80, 85, hit this thing in 6 gear, it's going to drop you down to 3,000 RPMs and you're just cruising nice and good and comfortable. Obviously a little bit different than my Sportster with only the 5-speed. You get up around like 80, 85, that thing is kind of screaming at you at about like 4,000, 4,300 RPM. So the engine, you know, really good. I mean, it's going to do anything you want. It's an 1850cc engine, you know, plenty of horsepower, plenty of torque. Thing's going to carry you and travel you anywhere you want to go, whether it's highway or back roads. So pretty happy with the performance aspect of that part so far. So the next thing to consider if you're traveling long distance or road tripping on this, and this would kind of really go for any Softail really, or any kind of like mid-sized cruiser, you think about like comfort and handling. So comfort, this bike obviously comes stock with the mini apes. So your arms are going to be elevated up just a little bit. Mine are just about shoulder height, so it's pretty comfortable of a reach for me. Obviously, people can switch that in and out if they want to make it more comfortable, more reach, more pullback, however they want to do that. I might hit up some T-bars one day. But until then, we've got the stock mini apes. And as far as the reach has been pretty much fine for me. Next up, another thing to consider is how comfortable are you going to be with the stock setup of the mid controls. Now, I always say this for me is very comfortable because I'm shorter, I'm 5'6", and I also sometimes say that these mid controls are a little bit more forward than mid. I'm stretching my knee out just enough to be comfortable. I haven't really had a problem with getting tight in the hips or anything like that. Now, of course, if you are taller, that's when you're going to hear people say, you know, probably going to want to stretch that out to a forward control to reach your legs out a little bit farther, get a little bit more comfortable with a reach. But for me personally, this is fine for me. I'm good with my knees, ankles, hips planted on the pegs just the way they are here. Some people might throw a mini floorboard on there, or floorboards in general. If you're traveling long distance on this bike, I think that would probably actually be kind of nice. It'd be a decent upgrade. Flat foot, steady there on a floorboard would be kind of nice instead of a peg, but I'm rocking with just the pegs right now and it's been fine for me. So next up, the next thing you're probably going to want to consider is your seat. Now, I will say the stock seat is absolutely terrible on this bike. It's thin, it's slippery, there's not a lot of padding to it. I would say there is not much way that you're going to want to travel long distance or road trip with that stock seat. So I switched mine out to the LaPera kickflip seat. Obviously that's like a step-up style. It's got a much wider base. It's a little bit firmer than some of the other seats out there. Got to continue getting this thing braked in, but it feels pretty good. You got your little step up in the back that you can kind of lean into when you need to accelerate, when you need to kind of like lean back and rest just a little bit. So if you're traveling on this thing, I just think there's no way that the stock seat is going to do it for you on this Harley Davidson Softail Street Bob. Next up, one of the other ones that I think people struggle with a lot of time on this bike is wind protection if you're traveling long distance or highway road tripping. So I have the Memphis Shades Road Warrior fairing here. And this bike obviously comes naked up front because, of course, it is a bobber style bike. You're going to come stock with nothing up here. So to me, in my opinion, the way that I like it, you know, I do some day trips, a lot of mid-range type stuff, but every once in a while I get out on a longer one, you know, 300-400 miles plus. And to me, I just want some of that wind protection for most of my rides. This Memphis Shades fairing does a pretty good job of it. You're pretty wide up front, kind of deflects a lot of it off to the side, and it's going to kind of send a lot of it up over your head as well. Now, are you going to have the comfort and wind deflection of a full touring bagger? Well, no, obviously, of course not, but this is going to give you enough to, I think, really make you comfortable, because when I first got this bike, I did a really long stretch of highway when I picked it up with nothing on the front, and really the riding position with your arms up like this, it turns you into like almost a parachute kind of, and especially with the power of the bike, it's just trying to like rip you off. Like you're about to fly off this thing. So if that is a lot of the traveling or long range, long distance type stuff that you're doing is on the highway, I would definitely recommend some wind protection here, a step-up seat to lock you in, and then you're good to go. Next up, a lot of people ask me about kind of like the comfort and suspension of the Softail and what I think of it when I'm on it for longer periods of time. And I mean, you know, it's good. I would say it's good enough. You know, I haven't had too many problems with it on this trip so far. Obviously, you get on the highway, you know, you're going 80, 85, you're hitting bumps, you're going to feel those little imperfections in the road. If you're in a construction zone, you're going to feel that stuff. There's no way around it. You're going to feel it if you're on a touring bike too. I mean, but I will say this, you know, I've done a little bit similar to this trip and distances on my Sportster, and obviously the Softail frame is bigger and better and more comfortable than that, but not to the level of a touring bike, of course. And I mean, that's kind of common sense. On the Sportster, you know, you're feeling a lot of that imperfections in the road, a lot of those different bumps and different stuff that just really jolts you. Softail frame's going to eat a good amount of that up. And I mean, you can really do some distance and traveling on this bike, no problem. I think another thing that plays into a factor of that is the weight of the bike as well. So, you know, you're coming in at about 650 pounds on this bike. The Sportster, about 100 pounds less. And you can really notice the difference on the highway with that little bit less weight. So you add some weight to this thing, you're nice and firmly planted to the ground. You got a great power plant in the bike. So the power mixed with the weight, I mean, you're planted. I was passing big, massive semis. You know, you feel some of their wind and some of the wind tunnels and stuff you get sucked into on those, but it's way more comfortable than the Sportster due to that power and weight that you have on this thing. So if you think about where this bike kind of sits in the lineup for Harley Davidson or compared to other bikes, when you're thinking about like long distance or road tripping of this bike, another thing you got to take into consideration would be kind of your fuel and your fuel tank here. You've got 3.5 gallons worth of gas, and the thing is, the Milwaukee 8 seems to be pretty fuel efficient. I'm getting pretty good fuel range on a tank of gas on this thing, and of course I'm coming from a Sportster where you're hardly getting anything. It's a 3.3 gallon tank, but this is only 3.5. But you can really crank out a lot more miles with this Milwaukee 8 and 3.5 gallons of gas over some of the other bikes. So like I said, you've got 3.5 gallons of gas in here. I've filled up twice so far. The first time I took it up to 140 miles. Of course, I set my trip. I kind of monitor, you know, where I'm at with gas and stuff like that. You do have a gauge here, which is nice, obviously, when you are road tripping and traveling like this. But my first fill up was at 140 miles. And I put 3 gallons of gas in it when I filled up. So technically I still had half a gallon of gas in there. Probably could have squeezed out, you know, 20, 25 more miles or so, maybe 30, but you know, didn't want to push it too far, of course. So I filled up, kept going, and then I just filled up again recently when we were back there at that gas station. So there I had 120 miles on it, and I put like, I think it was like 2.7 in there. So had almost a gallon left there still. So you're gonna get pretty good range on this thing with 3.5 gallons of gas. Again, you've got the gauge here that gives you some confidence in, you know, what you're doing, where you're planning out your gas stops and stuff like that. You don't have to be as careful as when I'm on the Sportster, for example, where, you know, you got 3.3 on the Evo engine, and I'm having to fill up almost, you know, every 80 to 100 miles just to be safe. I did stretch that up to 120 miles one time, and that thing was like running on fumes. So I would say from a gas mileage perspective and traveling and road tripping with this thing, you're gonna be in good shape. Now you get in with some of the baggers and stuff like that. Of course, you know, they got what, like 6-gallon tanks on those things. So I mean, they're gonna want to go over 200 something miles, but we ride with those guys, they're just gonna have to stop a little bit quicker. But honestly, I like to stop every like 100, 120 anyways, just to, you know, hop off, shake it out, grab some water, relax, and then get back to it. So we have now approached the area of DuBois, Pennsylvania. Again, that was just a nice little stretch of road there from Clearfield to DuBois, PA. I wanted to hop on, since we're on a road trip, doing some longer distance finally on the Street Bob, hop on, talk a little bit about my experience so far with it. Some tips and tricks to set yourself up for success if you are looking to road trip or do long distance on this thing. I think I have it pretty well kind of configured to where I like it and where it's good for me on this road trip so far. At least I'm sure I'll come up with other stuff along the way that I kind of want to do to it, outfit it, change some stuff, do some different stuff like that. But of course, like I said, if you are out there doing road trips on your Softails, your Street Bobs, or any bike really, let me know what some of your tips and tricks are, what you think about road tripping on a Harley Softail, and what your experiences have been like. But we are pretty much at the destination here. We got DuBois Harley Davidson. We are here to meet up with a couple people. We're gonna pull in here and wrap this one up. As always, if you like anything we got going on here, make sure you go ahead and like this video, drop us a comment down there. Make sure you ride safe out there, guys. It's the Moto John. We'll see you all on down the road. Peace.